Okay, hello everyone. I hope you're all well. We are going to begin as the rest join because of time. Yeah. So welcome to our today's class, and I'm just going to start from here, whereby we say that if you want to download the SQL software, you open on this link, which takes you to the MySQL community downloads area. You can download either of these versions. They are one and operate the same. We also say that once the download is done, okay, there is one step when you click on this link and opens on the download area. You click on download and it takes you to a page whereby it asks for login, or you can just say no, okay, just download. So we're clicking on that link, just download, so that the download begin. Then once the download is complete, you click on the setup, the download setup. It opens the first window, whereby we say that the option we're going with here is custom, so that you're able to choose the product that we want to work with manually. Then you click on next. We also went through how to move products. We said you expand the plus button here, and then you make sure you select the product. For example, MySQL server, you expand the plus button. We have MySQL version, and then you expand that to have the versions that already exist. You select on the first one and move it with this arrow here, the first one moving towards the right, so that you move all the products here. That's on MySQL server. On application, that's why we are getting MySQL workbench and MySQL shell. You click on next, and then you click on next and execute, so that the download is done. Once that's done, you click on next as well, so that you execute the installation. Yeah, you do the download and the installation process as well for all the products. Then we have the type and networking area. Here our products and settings remains as default, no changes that we are making. You click on next. Then we have the account and roles. Here you key in a password. Make sure you don't forget it. I'm going to be showing you how to we're going to be using it. So here we're going to be able to key in our password. Then once keyed in, you click on next. Yeah, you wait for configurations to be done. It takes just a few minutes. Then you click on finish. Otherwise, any other pop-up that opens, you click on next until finish. Yeah, sometimes you'll have the more details pop-ups, so you just click on next and finish. Yeah, until we are in our workbench area, where we are going to be reading from today. So sorry, I haven't opened MySQL, so let me just open up. Yeah, so I'm just typing here MySQL, and you can see we have MySQL workbench, the version installed, and the MySQL shell. The MySQL shell is majorly for writing commands. In this case, you as we progress, I'll show you how to write commands on a work shell or on shell, just to see the difference. Yeah, in most cases we're going to be writing yes commands on workbench, but we run them. Yeah, and we get the output. Otherwise, in MySQL shell, everything is a command line. I'll give an example. If you want to import data in Excel, in our workbench, sorry, we don't have to write commands. We can choose the import tab. But with the shell, you write a command which will extract that file from your computer. That's the difference. So we're working Microsoft Workbench. You select on it so that you open it. Yeah, so that you don't open the Microsoft the MySQL the MySQL shell. You open the workbench itself. So I don't know whether it's opening. Yeah, it is. So that's how the MySQL workbench in view looks like. I hope it is visible on your side. Okay, I don't know when the rest will join, because Andre Chacha, who reached out and said he won't manage to class. So I don't. I'll just hope the rest will join as we move forward, because we're beginning where we left in our previous lesson. Yeah. So this is how our welcome window looks like, whereby we just have a welcome message, and then some few tabs. In this case, we have the home and the file, edit, view, database, and so on. And then down here we have my SQL connection. On your side, you just have local instance. Yeah, you just have local instance MySQL connection. Yeah, you just have one connection. On that note, I'm having two. So someone could be asking why do I have two, or how can I have more than one connection? This is how you add a connection. We have a plus button just beside MySQL connections. We have a plus sign. Yeah, if you click on it, I'm clicking on the plus button just next to MySQL connection. It opens a window. Yeah, that the first option area here is connection name. What do you want to call it? For example, the first one is local instance MySQL. I created a local one. Yeah, so okay, welcome Matthias. So as we progress, kindly Matthias, can you please inbox me tomorrow if you're free, so that we can do your installation? I just remembered I didn't reach out. Kindly, you can just reach out tomorrow, so that we just remind me, so that we can go ahead and do the installation before we get in advanced queries, whereby you must have the SQL. So yeah, so I'm saying this is what we're doing. We just did a recap of what we have been doing. We did in a previous class. Then we are going to our welcome workbench area. We have MySQL connection section and a plus button. So we clicked on this plus button and we got this pop-up window. In the connection name, we give our connection a name. Let's say root. Let's call it root. Yeah. And then once you give it a name, you leave everything as default. But on the password area, we have store vault area. Yeah. If you click on store in vault, you'll be required to key in the password we area had. Yeah, we area created. Remember when we were doing the installation in our process, I've said that you have to key in a password here, and make sure you don't forget it. So this is the password that we are going to be using when creating a new instance connection, and also when opening our already existing. That's why I said it's important that you remember the password. So I won't key in the password for now, but that's how we add a connection. Let's first work with the already existing connection. So you click on the local instance. Yeah, you click on my local instance, and then once you click on it, you key in the password. Okay, let me just create one, because the already existing one have a password. I've already keyed in the password. I'll click on the plus button. I'll add a connection, call it root, as I already did. And then on the password area store vault, I'll key in the password. Yeah. Let me just hope I didn't forget it. Make sure you don't forget the password. You may always need it. Yeah, it's okay. I've keyed in the password. I'll show you the last step before we get into using SQL. whereby we are supposed to make sure that the connection is working. So I'll just click OK, and then I have the root password. Okay, I have an error where I keyed in the name, but that's how you create a password, right? And then to open it, I'll just double click on it, and then it opens the SQL. Of course, it will ask for the password. Make sure you key in the password, as I already mentioned. And this is the view of SQL, MySQL in this case. Yeah, this is the view of SQL. I hope everybody has managed to come to this point. If not, you can reach out. Okay, so we're going to be navigating onto this area, but I want to show you something. Back to the connection. So this is how you go to the connection area. You just click on home. You can see on the top we have my SQL name. Down we have a home like icon. So if you click on it, it takes you back to the home page where we started when we opened the SQL. Yeah, so let's create now a new connection. So you click on the plus button, you give it a name. I'll call it root. I don't know why when I typed I call it root. Under the password area, I'll click on store to vault, and then the pop-up window for store password for connection, you type the password. Yeah, and then I'll click OK. But before I click on OK on this window, it's always good to test the connection, whether it's successful or not. So we have the test connection tab here. I hope you can see my screen. Just next to console, we have test connection. So if I click on test connection, this is the message I get. My SQL workbench successfully made my SQL connection, and the details in within. Yeah, so that means that the connection is successful. Otherwise, if it is not, you'll get failed. That means anytime you click on OK here, it won't even work. The OK will just give you an error. Yeah, that means you can't create the connection. So in case you encounter that, also you reach out. So I'll just click OK since my connection is successful, and you can see we have our connection created. Yeah, so the other way is if you want to delete a connection. For example, I have the previous created connection. I would like to delete it. Yeah, I'll just right click on the connection, and then the second last option is for delete connection. Yeah, you can delete all connection, but of course it's not recommended you delete all, because probably you may have already keyed in the data. You don't want to lose that. Yeah, some commands in that case. So you delete the connection that you have chosen. So I'll just delete connection. Delete connection pop-up warning. Do you want to delete connection? And then the name of the connection. If you're good and you confirm that you want to delete, you just click on delete, and the connection is deleted. Yeah, so you can see under the home area, next is the previous created connection. If I click on it, it exists, but it exists here, but it doesn't exist in my connection area. So I'll just close it. You can see the X sign just next to it. I'll close it so that now I can open an already existing connection to avoid any inconveniences. So I want to work with the root, so I'll click on it just the way we clicked on the previous one, our local instance, and then we have our connection, and we can go ahead and work with everything as required. Yeah, I hope we are together. So yes.
Good evening, Lucy.
Oh, good evening.
I've just checked that window, and it's different from mine. I don't know if maybe there is a because for mine I have a management on the far left, management column.
That way.
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay, no problem, everything is okay. So what you'll do, I'll just give an interface of our view here, and then once that is done, you're going to get into understanding more about SQL. So let me just take you through the interface. So we have the tabs, the menu tab, where we're having file, edit, view, SQL query, database, and so on. In the file area, we have the new model. We have the new query tab. A new query tab is like the already existing area. You can see we have query 1. This is a query tab. So if I click on file and then select on new query tab, it adds a new SQL query file area here. So you can see we have query 1 and query 2. Then under the same file, we also have SQL script. This is the difference between query tab and SQL script. When you talk about a new query tab, we are opening a new blank SQL file that does not contain anything. But when we open SQL script, we are opening an already existing SQL file that you earlier created and saved it, and now you want to open it. That's when we work with SQL script. So I'll just click on open SQL script. It should take you to a computer so that you locate where that SQL file is, and we're going to be doing that in our next class. Yeah. Then we have apart from the SQL scripts, we have run SQL script once opened, yeah, and the save SQL script and save as. So, and of course, if you want to exist, you can use this tab, or you can just close normally. That's on the file. We have edit. You can see most of the tabs here are not active simply because we don't have anything within our area here. We have the undo, we have the redo, we have cut, copy, paste, and of course the shortcuts. You can always use the shortcuts. We have the view. If you want to go back to the home tab, just as Aria did, you can click on that. We have the query. We're going to be learning through some of these SQL commands. Then the database, the server tool, and so on. Yeah, that's on the tab area. Of course, you can see we have that's on the menu tab. You can see we have shortcut commands here. For the first tab is create a new SQL tab, just as we earlier did when we were creating this SQL file. You can use the first option command. The second one is for opening an SQL file. Yeah, if you click, it should take you to a computer, as earlier we saw. That's SQL script. We have open inspector for the selected objects. For opening a new schema, we're going to be learning a schema in a few. We have create new table in the active schema, yeah, and so on. So these are shortcut commands, and also you will see we have some few commands where we are having query 1 and the new created SQL query tab. We have the first one for open an SQL. We have open a script file. Yeah, we have seen a number of ways of opening a script file. A script file, we have said, is opening an already existing file. We have save. We have save the SQL file. If you want to save, for example, the SQL file 1 or the query 1, you can always use this tab. Another thing it has that you have two run options. For example, if you want to execute everything that you have written in the SQL file, you use the first option. Okay, welcome Sandra. If you want to run every query that's within your script, you use the first option. But majorly we use the second option. These are two flashlights, but the difference is that the second one has kind of a 1 between it. So what's differentiate? So we will majorly use the second one, because you're going to be running a query at a time. For example, if you want to run just line 1 and we don't want to run the rest, we're going to be using this. You can select a array that you want to run, and then you run it. But if you use the first option, you run everything, whereby you rerun already existing queries. So make sure you take note of the tab you will be using to run our command. Yeah. The other important tab is to the far end, where we have this is for saving. We have a brush-like, yeah, icon, which is majorly used to rearrange your work. For example, we may write a line of command which is too long in a way that it ends to the far end where is your screen. So you have to scroll using a bar down here to have a view of the whole entries within your line of command. So to avoid that, we're going to be learning how to use this icon. It's called beautifier, to arrange our work accordingly. Yeah, so those are the shortcut commands that we're going to be using. Next, we have our navigator area. Just below the shortcut commands on our left, we have the navigator area, where we are having management, instance, and performance. So these are SQL information that are inbuilt. We can't make changes to them, but of course we have commands such as import, export. You can see we have data export, data import, and we're going to be seeing them into these shortcut commands as well. Yeah, that's you realize that down here on this navigator area, we have administration and we have schema. Under administration, that's why we have management, we have instance, and performance. Yeah, but when you click on schema, you'll just have one database called sys. So you're going to be understanding what's a database and also what a schema is. Yeah, so that's basically our interface of the tabs that you're going to be using. Let me just hide this. So I hope the view is clean. Okay, we have another thing. I just remembered your screen looks like this. Okay, just a minute. Yes, this is how your screen looks like. You have a categorized number of windows. One is where we are having our SQL query tab area. We have we're going to be adding multiple queries as well. Down here we have the output area. The best thing about SQL is that we're going to be getting information about whether a command is a line of command is successful or not. And on that note, it will also add some message. You can see we have time, action, and a message in between at the middle where my mouse is. This tells us that we're going to be getting a message of our error, where our error, what is our error in our line of command, and we can go ahead and edit it, yeah, so that our command will be successful. That's the output area. Of course, we'll get a pop-up output which contains, for example, if we create a table which shows us what is contained within our table, and so on. We also have SQL additions area here. We're not going to be majorly using it, but of course you can see we have contact help area and we have a snippet. And just to give you an information, a snippet is a command line that tells you if you want, for example, to use the if statement. Just an example, it gives you the look of a command line, a syntax. Let me use the syntax of how the if statement or any other command that we need looks like. That's what a snippet looks like. So let's do away with some of these. For example, the add-ins. On the right top corner of the screen, I hope you can see my mouse. We are having some boxes, window-like. Yeah, they're highlighted in blue. That means they're active. When you select, for example, in the first one, it hides our navigator area here. You can just look into it. If you select the first one, you highlight on it to unselect it, it becomes black other than blue, and now you can see the navigator area. So make sure it's in blue so that you have your navigator to understand whether you've created a table or not. We have the second one. This the blue is on the side, that means the navigator. The second one, the blue is on below, that means we are talking about the output area. So if I select on it, we lose our output window, and of course we need it, so make sure it's selected. And lastly is for our SQL additions here. So if I select on it, we are able to remove the add-ins, and of course you can, okay, my advice is that let's just remove the add-ins. We're not going to be using it. I'll just click select or unselect this tab so that it isn't visible. Of course you can go ahead and minimize the output window. Just hover around this area. Once you see this plus sign that's edged on the top and bottom, you hold your mouse and drag it down, sorry, so that you minimize the output window and you increase the space of our SQL query area. Anybody having a question about the SQL interface? Okay, I hope we are together. So let's go ahead and understand what is this SQL, what are the database. I've mentioned a number of times database, what are these, and how are we going to be using this as well. So we have database management system. Of course, with the database we have the data, so you have to understand what is data. Data are raw facts that are processed to make it useful information or useful and meaningful. If we talk about raw facts, as always mentioned, we all say that anything that you do is data. The time you're taking to go through the SQL class, that's data. The people involved, that's data. Whatever we are talking about, that's data. So those are the raw facts that can be used to be useful in a certain way. For example, if you want to understand how is the running process, how is the time spent and everything, we can go ahead and make this data useful. Yeah, so data are raw facts that are processed to make it useful and meaningful. We have database, which will be our most common term in SQL. Database is an organized collection of data so that it can be easily accessed and managed. It is a collection of data stored in a computer system. So I'll give an example of a database. For example, a class, or you can just use ourselves. For example, right now you're taking SQL, and in our previous class we were taking Tableau. Yeah, so I'm taking this as a class. So if I create a table and store data about a student or involved, in this case I'll have the information about their names, their gender, maybe the age, yeah, and the program they are taking. Yeah, on the other hand, I can also have a table that contains the details about the instructor who is taking you through this, the unit itself, so that anytime I want to get information about a specific student and who took the instructor who took him or her through the program, I'm able to get that. So that's a data. Yeah, so that's a database. Sorry, that's a database. So you are organizing and storing data in a specific way so that it can be easily accessed. You're able to access the data without any struggle, as we're going to be seeing. We have database management system, a very used and common term in database. So it's the short form of database management system is DBMS. It's a software for creating and managing database. It allows users to create and retain database. Yeah. It's also used SQL for data manipulation. On that note, we have a number of types of database management system, and these are just examples. Yeah, these are examples of database management system. In this case, relational database management system. Yeah, I've said we have a number of types of database management system, and what we are having here is, for example, if I talk about MySQL, this is the software that we have installed. We have said a DBMS is a software for creating and managing database, and in our case we are going to be using MySQL. On addition to that, it is not just a database management system, it's a relational database management system. Yeah, so we're going to be storing data in form of tables. That's what relational database management tells us, that we're going to be storing we're going to be storing our tables or our data in form of tables, and table of course contains rows and columns. We have what is SQL. SQL is a standard language for dealing with relational databases. Yeah, SQL is a query programming language that manages a relational database management system. So this is a programming language, so we're going to be involving codes. Yeah, so it's always important to make sure you look much into detail, so that you don't miss out something that may be required or may be needed to run a specific code. Yeah, and another advice for programming language in most cases is that make sure that you keep on your toe. You're working with the program, you are running something, you're looking for exercises to keep you updated or to keep you learning, so that you don't forget the queries involved. SQL is a primarily used query and operates database system. So we're going to be working, of course, with databases. What is a database table? A table is a collection of related entries. Yeah, and it consists of columns and rows. Yeah. I'll give an example as well, as I mentioned. When we talk about students, that's an entry. So I've said a table is a collection of related data entries. So we have students data database, and then we have instructors database. So these are two related data entries, and they contains, of course, columns and rows within them. Give an example. Let's talk about a student table. When I key in a column, when I key in details about the names of the students, that's a column. Yeah, but each name of each student, that's a row. That's why we're talking about columns and rows. A column holds specific information about every record in a table. Record is a row. Record, row. So we are storing data in a column, and each column has a specific information. For example, we can have someone's name, let's say Paul. Just an example. We have Paul, that's the name, that's a column. If you go to probably Kevin, that's a row. Yeah, the name is the column, but when you talk about Paul and Kevin, those are rows. Okay, every table is broken up into small entries called fields. Fields are columns. I've said records are rows, and then we have fields are columns. So every table is broken into small entities called fields. The fields in the student table consist of student ID. For example, this is a student entry. It contains student ID. We can have their first name, their last name, we have address, we have city and country. So these are columns. Yeah, and any entries within these columns, that's a row. I hope that's clear. You can just write somewhere. A row is a record, and then we have a field is a column, so that anytime we talk about a field, you won't get confused to understand what a field is. Anytime we talk about a record, you're able to understand that you're talking about a row. So a field is a column, I've said that, in a table that is designed to maintain specific information about every record in a table. A record, also called a row, in each individual entry that exists in a table. So that's the difference between a record and a field. I hope I'm still audible, just in case you let me know. We have relational database concepts, just basic terms. We have a schema. We have seen a schema in our area. It refers to the organization of data. I'll just take you back to SQL where we have a schema. For example, we have sys. This is a database, yeah, which contains organization of a number of tables. So if I click on this drop down, I can call it drop down or a button beside sys database. I'll click on it, and what I have is a list of entries. For example, we have table, view, stored procedures, and functions. If I expand on tables, by clicking on the same area, you can see the number of tables within this database. We have a table containing countries, called countries. It can contain the country code, it can contain the country name, the addresses, and so on. We have department, we have employees, we have job history, and so on. Yeah, so you can always minimize this by clicking on the same area. Just get back to here you are. That's a schema. We have said is an organization of data. We have a table. A table has rows and columns, and here rows represent records and columns represent and attributes. Attributes are characteristics, yeah, of a person. For example, we talk about their name, their age, their location. All these are attributes about a person, and we're going to be storing our column as attributes, and then their entries, that's what we call a record. We have a column. The column is the vertical partition of a table. In relational database management system, they are often called attributes. Then we have said they are also known as fields. We have rows. These are horizontal partitions of a table, also called tuples. These are number name for a row in a relational database management system. Then we have indexes. It's the data structure that improves the operation of a table by locating the data. Okay. I hope I'm audible. Hello, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So I hope you all are able to follow along. Just in case you're stuck, you make sure you reach out. We are under the SQL statement. What we are majorly doing is trying to understand the terms and what we are going to be expecting in our area of commands. Yeah, we have SQL statement. SQL itself stands for Structured Query Language for relational database management systems, databases. We have SQL statements are used to retrieve. So we're going to be retrieving SQL are used to retrieve data, join tables, to select out right type of data. So we're going to be, when you talk about retrieving data, for example, we may have a table containing a number of columns, yeah, but probably we just want to know the name. We just want to know the name of a specific organization, the names of the employees, and probably their department where they are working. So we're going to be retrieving that. When we talk about joining tables, we can have a table, for example, employees and then their salaries, and you want to extract data from the employee to get their name and then their salary. So we're joining two different tables. That's where joined comes from. Remember, we said we're going to be learning more about joins in this SQL area. We have who uses SQL. we have a huge website like Facebook. Of course, it stores data about every person user account, so they're storing data in form of a database. We have Twitter, Airbnb, GitHub, YouTube, and so on. We have content management systems such as WordPress, we have Drupal, Jumia, etc. So all these, we have accounts created, and these data that they store them in form of a database. MySQL, that's what we're using. Why MySQL? One, it's an open source. You don't have to pay, or it does not require a licensing for you to use it, so it's a free program. Then we have cross-platform. It can run on Windows, Linux, Unix, etc. We have Macs and so on. We have high availability. Possesses a high processing system that make MySQL process bulk questions and transactions while ensuring unique memory kinks. So we are able to run bulk queries and get the right output. Reliable. MySQL has the SSH and SSL, which provide secure connection in MySQL. Yeah, so MySQL comes with features such as data encryption and data backup for recovery. So it's a reliable software. So next we have some few things to keep in mind when you're using SQL. So SQL keywords are not case sensitive. I'll just open SQL and show you. For example, if I write a command, let's say select, and then extract from probably the command with the added information, and someone else types select and extract the same command, we're going to get the same output. It doesn't matter whether it's uppercase or lowercase. Yeah, so you'll get the same kind of output. That's why we say SQL keywords are not case sensitive. Yeah, so select in small and select in caps, or any other command, it isn't you're going to get the right output as well. We have semicolon after the sentence, SQL sentence statement, sorry. So the semicolon is a standard way to separate each SQL statement in database system that allows more than one SQL statement to be executed in the same call of server. So let me go back to SQL. For example, if I want to select from, I'll just expand the table here, the sys database. Yeah, so probably I want to select from countries. Yeah, I have to add the command with a semicolon, so that the next select statement won't be affected by the previous statement. You're going to be seeing that. Yeah, so the major purpose of an SQL statement is to separate the first line of command and the second line of command. Yeah, that's the main purpose of those semicolons. So anytime you write a line of command, to separate them you use a semicolon. Okay, into our data types. We have SQL data types. And in the SQL data types are used to represent the nature of the data which can be stored in the database table. For example, in a particular column of a table, if we want to store a string type of data, we will have to declare the string data type on this column. Of course, we're going to see this as we key in values, and these are the data types involved. For example, I'll just give an example. For example, when we talk about students' name, yeah, when creating a table, we give this column, let's say first name. we have to specify the data type for the column depending on the entries that you're going to be keying in. The same for age. That's why we have to start the data type, so that when it comes to creating these tables or we are able to differentiate different types of data type, and we're going to specify the same for our entries. An example is the string data type, and it has a number of categories. For example, we have the character. It's a fixed length type of string. Then it contains letters, numbers, and special characters. We have the variable character. It's a variable length string. It's the major used because it's not fixed. It's the major used, the variable character. The length are not. We have a variable length string and contain the same letters, number, and special character. And you can see we have the character with n number of entries. We have a variable character with n number of entries, and then we have lastly variable character with a maximum number of entries. We're going to be using this data type and learn how to understand and differentiate between our variables. We have numeric data types, and for example, in this case we'll have the integer. This is a medium integer, and we're going to be using int for that. We have float. These are decimals. We have a floating point number. So MySQL uses p value to determine whether to use float or double for the resulting data type. So you have to understand what's the difference between a double and a float, because with these are decimal, of course these are decimal type of variable, but what differentiate between them? We have said SQL uses a p to differentiate between them. We have date and time data type. The date is a date format whereby you have the year, the month, and the date. The time, we have the hour, the minutes, and the second. And you can have a combination of date and time where you have the year, month, and the date followed by hour, minutes, and seconds. That's on the date and time category. We have MySQL is the relational database management system. I mentioned that earlier on. Yes, Bill.
Lucy,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I've just seen that the slides you indicated that MySQL uses the p-value to determine whether to use a float or a double. What's the meaning of this p-value?
Okay, we're going to work with it and understand, but what the first thing you're supposed to know is that one, what is a float? I've mentioned that I've said a float is whereby you're having a numeric. Remember, we had a numeric category, but it's not a whole number. It's not a whole number. And the same for double. And we have said we use this p to separate. So we're going to understand more about this p value, which helps us understand the difference between a double and a float, because these are decimal place type of data type.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome. We have MySQL is a relational database management system. I mentioned that it's not just a database management system, but a relational. And I mentioned that a relational means that we are storing data in form of tables, and these tables contains rows and columns. So it allows you to handle, retrieve, modify, delete data, and also store data in an organized way. So this is just a better definition of what MySQL is. I'll be sharing the notes with you as soon as possible. We're going to talk about the syntax in a few. So we're going to take a few minutes break. We go on a few minutes break. On that note, you can try and check on how to the difference between probably the float. You understand the terms I've mentioned, for example, the columns and rows. You can record that somewhere, and so on. And also you can just take a sip of water. Let's meet in a few. Unless you have a question, you can go ahead and ask.